Comment, like, subscribe. The bell keeps you notified. It helps the show thrive. Philadelphia is one of the most well-known cities in the entire United States, and that's for good reason. It's a city that is hugely important in the history of the USA. It was in the city of Philadelphia where the founding fathers of the USA met often and debated the formation of their new nation. It was also in this very city where the US Constitution and the Declaration of Independence were written and signed. To many, Philly is really seen as the birthplace of the USA as we know it today. However, the land's history stretches back way further than to just 1776. Before the likes of Washington, Hamilton, Franklin, and Co. made this city the birthplace of the USA, people were already living here, and of course, they were not using that name of Philadelphia. The earliest people that we know of who settled in this land were the LENAPE people. This indigenous tribe are also known by a couple other names, including the Lenape people and the Delaware people, but for ease's sake we'll just be sticking with Lenape. This name comes from their language and their words meaning things like first, genuine and original, in reference to the fact that they were the initial settlers of this area of land, and that's really hard to argue. It's believed that the Lenape people in this land years before any Europeans, with some estimates placing them being there over 6,000 years ago. These people would have lived through hunting and farming the land, and once the soil they farmed lost its fertility, the tribes would move to somewhere new with fresh soil. This would happen roughly every 2 decades or so. Of course, one of the areas in which they found great for living in is the land which now houses the city of Philadelphia, though they did not construct a huge city there, and they didn't call it Philadelphia. Instead, they called the land that Philly now sits on and its wider area Coaquinock. Huge apologies about pronunciation on this one, I couldn't find it said out loud anywhere on the internet, I'm afraid. So many places across the globe have older native/indigenous names that have been replaced over the years. Perhaps the most popular example of this comes in the form of Uluru in Australia, which for so long was known solely by the name given to it by Europeans of Ayers Rock, or how Easter Island also has the native name of Rapa Nui. This native name of Coaquinock, however, does not seem to come up in these conversations as often. Like, the word doesn't even show up anywhere on the Wikipedia page for the city. It is of course a name of Lenape origin, and it means grove of the tall pines. Various Native American tribes use the naming convention of naming places after what grew there. This was to help remind them of where to go when searching for specific ingredients or resources. Another great example is with the city of Chicago and how its name means the place of wild onions, as wild onions grew along the banks of its river. The tall pine trees that grew here were clearly important to them. Perhaps they used the wood of the trees for crafting their homes. It seems the main reason as to why we don't talk about this old name for the Philly area too often is because of the fact that there is seemingly very little evidence of this name out there. The earliest evidence we seem to have of this name comes from a 1675 survey of this area of land. This was at a time when Europeans were just starting to settle in this part of the world. However, the name most noticeably appears on a map which is dubbed the Coaquinock map. This map was actually first published in 1934, so it was created way after the fact. But the aim of this map was to depict what the Philadelphia area looked like to the natives before the arrival of Europeans in the 17th century. The map is beautifully illustrated and not only shows the land, but also depicts various native Lenape people and animals too. Despite being published in the 30s, it remained largely unknown of, finally being put on display at the Museum of Indian Culture in Allentown in January 2020. It's a really cool looking map, and as mentioned, it's the most prominent use of the name Coaquinock that we have. So what became of this name? Despite what happened to various native tribes once European settlement came into full swing, many of their names have lived on. Many big cities across the United States have names of Native American origins. We already mentioned Chicago, but there's also Seattle, which comes from the name of Chief Seashal of the Duwamish tribe. Likewise, Malibu, Tampa, Manhattan, Bemidji, and around half the states of the USA have names of Native American American origins. Suffice to say, names of native origin are found all over the nation, and despite how poorly various tribes have been treated in the past, many of their names were not pushed to the side like they themselves were. So why didn't the name of Coaquinock get the chance to stick around like Seattle and Chicago have? Well, it seems to be because of the rather unique history of not just the city of Philadelphia, but the state it is in too, Pennsylvania. To really oversimplify things, and I mean really oversimplify them, a lot of the USA, as it became part of the USA, simply incorporated things that were already there into it, like place names and borders. It's why the further west you go, the larger the states are. In the nation's northeast, however, where the country was first created, things were a lot more curated. Brand new names were created by those who settled in this land, with one of those people being William Penn. William Penn was not the first European the Lenape people living in Coaquinock would have interacted with. In preceding years, the Lenape would have dealt and traded with various Dutch and Swedish settlers here too. Penn, however, made the biggest impact in this land. William Penn was an English Quaker leader and deep advocate of religious freedoms. In 1682, he arrived in what would become the USA, to claim land which had been granted to him by King Charles II. He was instructed to start a safe haven in the New World for fellow Quakers who were being persecuted in England. Of course, this land not only housed what became the city of Philadelphia, but a larger tract of land too. And if you hadn't guessed by now, the Penn in Pennsylvania comes from this guy. Well, kind of. He didn't name the area after himself directly, but rather named it after his father, who was also called William Penn. So yeah, kind of did and didn't name it after himself, I suppose. I'm sure we all have a fair idea as to where this story is going, however. European person settles in the New World, the native people lose out tremendously. What's interesting here, however, is that this wasn't actually the case, at least to begin with anyway. As mentioned, Penn was a big advocate of religious freedoms, and the belief of Quakers in general was to treat people fairly with friendship and goodwill, even if they have different religious outlooks. Penn believed that the Lenape people were still brothers and sisters of God too, despite the fact they were so different to him in their lifestyle and religious views. While this land came under his ownership, he allowed the Lenape people to have areas of it unto themselves and allowed them to live how they had been living for so long. This is a pretty unique story in the world of European and native relations, and the two groups lived in relative peace in the land. Well, until the death of William Penn in 1718, however. In 1737, the Lenape lost pretty much all claim to the land that they had held onto in a fraudulent deed called the Walking Purchase. This purchase was executed by William Penn's son, who claimed that the initial deal his father made with the Lenape people actually claimed that Penn's family owned all the land within a day-and-a-half walking distance. This extended the Penn family's ownership of this area a further 65 miles to the north and west. As the Lenape moved outwards, the land they sought refuge in was taken away from them too by other European settlers. Lenape numbers from here dwindled. So, while William Penn initially had good intentions to live alongside the Lenape people, those intentions fell to the wayside pretty much from the moment he died. And while he wanted to live in harmony with the Lenape people, he clearly had no intention on keeping the name for this land alive. As well as naming the state of Pennsylvania after his father, he also named the city of Philadelphia too. Not only did he name it, but he was central in the construction and design of the city too. As I hinted towards, the initial lands of the USA in its now northeast were much more curated and designed, and this was especially the case with Philadelphia. Penn wanted the city to be a utopia of sorts. Its broad grid street layout was to try and help promote green living, and it was also meant to be a city in which everyone lived in harmony with one another, regardless of religious outlook. This all ties into Penn's aforementioned Quaker beliefs. This utopian ideal of everyone getting along with one another is the basis of the name Penn gave to his dream city, Philadelphia. Philadelphia is quite commonly known as the city of brotherly love, but this isn't a nickname like New York's Big Apple or Chicago's Windy City. The name Philadelphia quite literally means city of brotherly love. Penn penned this name of Philadelphia from the Greek words of phileo, meaning love, and Adelphos, meaning brother. The ear suffix was added as it's a staple of place name word formation, as I'm sure we all know by now. Penn gave his city this name because he wanted it to be a place where there would be no religious intolerance, and where everyone would treat their metaphorical brothers and various other metaphorical siblings, regardless of sex and gender too, of course, with love. Philadelphia is also a name that existed in the ancient Greek and Roman world too, it would seem. This isn't the only case of a city from antiquity sharing its name with a city in the New World, of course. One day we will cover how Memphis, Egypt lent its name to Memphis, Tennessee, I promise. Anyway, while Penn had really great intentions with this name, as we know, unfortunately those intentions did not pan out after his death. And while this is a well-crafted name, it unfortunately came with the sad consequence of wiping out the original native name of this land, Coaquinock, pretty much from the history books. Thankfully, this name survived in enough written places for it to live on and for us to know about it today. And it seems that people of native origins in the city are trying to reclaim this name once again. So hopefully we will start seeing the name Coaquinock appear more often in our history books. And yeah, I hear the weather's pretty good here too. This video topic was suggested by Aisteran Campbell over on my Patreon. Every Wednesday I put up a video request post over on my Patreon for my awesome patrons to leave video ideas on. I then pick one of those ideas to be turned into a video the following Wednesday. So if you have a great idea for a Name Explain video and wish to enjoy Name Explain videos ad-free as well as get exclusive content, then why not support the channel on Patreon? It takes just $1 a month to help the channel in a huge way and gets you all these amazing benefits. Visit patreon.com/nameexplain or click the link down below. Name Explain depends on viewers like yourself supporting the channel financially on Patreon, so a huge thank you to everyone who does. Donating just $1 a month helps the channel amazingly and gets you bonuses including ad-free videos, exclusive content, and the power to request ideas to be made into actual Name Explain videos. $2 a month gets you all that, plus your name here with all these awesome people. Visit patreon.com/nameexplain or click the link down below to find out how you too can support the channel. Thank you. Thanks for reaching the end of the video. Why not watch another and subscribe to keep up to date on all things Name Explain. You can find myself on Instagram where I'm NameExplainYT and join the Facebook group Friends of Name Explain to talk with myself and other name nerds. All that will be linked down below. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video and once again, thank you all so much.